So let's get right into it. Issues that concern the southeast region of the country. We're joined on the program, as you've seen, by public affairs analyst and former chief technical advisor to Governor Hope Uzodinma of Imo State on the new Imo project, Mr. Jerry Chukwueke is right with us in our Lagos studio. You're welcome to the Morning Brief.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
It's good to have you. You know, we just had that conversation with Senator Ome,
Yes.
and somehow we still talked about the southeast in some sense. There's elections coming in Anambra State. That's on the one hand, but the bigger conversation around insecurity still remains. The effect on the economy of the southeast, the livelihoods of the people. There's still the debate about Nnamdi Kanu in court as well, how the government is able to handle the situation. So it's a lot of issues put together in one, but I want to start by getting your reaction to the handling of the issues of the southeast, particularly by the Tinubu government. Security and other issues. How would you rate the Tinubu government?
Well, first, let me, quite frankly, appreciate the work governors at the subnational level in the southeast and the security agents have done so far in trying their best to ensure sufficient security. But now more has to be done. More has to be done. My view is that new ideas and new ways of doing business when it comes to security have to come to play now. I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. The governor of my state in Imo, with major infrastructural development as focus, empowerment of young people from a viewpoint of digital economy and bringing them to the workforce globally. Now talking about an amnesty program that is more robust. You see what Governor Soludo is doing as well in Anambra State from a different perspective. What the governor in Enugu State is doing. What's happening in Abia. But let's be clear. I think we need to dimension this a bit. We have a situation where in some parts of the southeast, the issue of herdsmen and farmers and how that's affecting food security is an issue. And so you have to appreciate what the federal government is talking about now, particularly the Ministry of Livestock, that we need to embrace change with regards to the concept of ranches in view of the fact that we get to grow the agricultural value chain. That's important. That's a new way of doing business. So we need to be open to that in the southeast and embrace it so we can actually take that challenge and turn it into an opportunity. It's important because there's money to be made in agricultural value chain, jobs to be created. Because a good chunk of the insecurity is about economic empowerment. We say in America, economy is stupid.
So basically what you're saying is, because
Yes.
my question was predicated on how you would rate President Bola Tinubu so far
Yes.
in his administration,
Yes.
or at least intervention in the Southeast. So are you saying that primarily the responsibilities with the subnationals, the governors?
Yeah, no, I've made the
sense?
point that the Minister of Livestock is pursuing now a strategy of ranching so we can actually grow the agricultural value
So you think
chain.
the president
That's
has done
important.
right by the Southeast?
Oh, absolutely. Let me even connect some more. I listened carefully to Mr. President at their caucus meeting. By the way, I am a chieftain of the APC. That is, I think it's better put on the table. And he was talking about why we ought to be a bit more patient and hopeful because the painful pill, the evil necessity of removing the subsidy, fuel subsidy, is now starting to pay off. And you can see that it's starting to pay off because we have a situation where allocation to the states and local governments have more than tripled. That's important. We now have a situation where crude oil production is now hovering about 1.4 million barrels a day compared to the 750,000 only a few years ago. So we're earning more foreign exchange. We certainly have more crude for the refiners in our domestic economy. But it now means that the subnationals have greater opportunities to focus on creating more economic opportunities for our people. So I'm linking that to say it is a consequence of President Bola Tinubu's firm policy to say this is a necessary evil, but we need to go through it and then enjoy the dividends. We'll stand to see it, even in the stabilization now of the foreign exchange, in terms of the naira value. But let's go beyond that. If you look at the Southeast, what we're hoping will begin to happen some more is how the focus on local government administrations can bring about economic flow, money flow. Not necessarily anymore money flowing only around a few people, because that's been a challenge in the Southeast, and by extension, many parts of Nigeria. Let the little people, the average man, in the local communities, suppliers, vendors, people who ordinarily would find an opportunity to make a living. We need to give them that opportunity because we need to keep our people busy, particularly the young people.
Isn't that where we should be asking the governors where the extra money
that's the point I'm making
is going to?
Yes, so that's the point, ma'am. So here's the point, and I'll connect them. You have much more robust allocation. We now have the opportunity to do more. I understand political controls over local government structures. That's not my argument. My argument is that we need to allow those local governments to function sufficiently from a viewpoint of the economy, so the average people can benefit from this robust application of FAC now that is coming as a consequence of the privatization and the issue of removing the subsidy. So here's the point. If you go to many of our local communities, and particularly for our young people and women, and they have access to basic opportunities of money flow, that's a big issue, because the monies are circulating only amongst a few people, and the vast majority of our people are not benefiting from it. So local government effective application would definitely help, monitored well, so people can have more access to the wealth creation opportunities and the consequence of the new situation.
Let's tie this to the concern of insecurity in the Southeast. Before the local governments can function, there must be a sense of safety in those local communities. But we find that the stability that some parts of the Southeast are beginning to enjoy, i.e., Enugu, I'm not sure I can say the same 100% for Abia, and not necessarily in other parts like Anambra, where the decomposing body of a lawmaker was found on the second Niger Bridge in recent times. And in 2022, another state assembly lawmaker was murdered. Just in January alone, in Imo State, in some communities, about 18 people were killed. Why aren't we seeing a deliberate, intentional collaboration amongst the governors of the Southeast to stem the tide in insecurity, particularly now that they have more resources to work with when you consider increased allocation from the Federation account?
Look, I absolutely buy the argument. And this is where the governor of my state, who is a chairman of the Southeast Governors Forum, has an important opportunity. Because we can actually align the strategies at the subnational levels to focus on what we need to achieve generally. Because Imo is a gateway. You come into Imo, you go Imo West, you are facing Anambra State. You go Imo North, you are facing Enugu and Abakaliki. It's very serious. So it's easy to penetrate Imo from a viewpoint of insecurity and use it as a focus point. So the point is, can there be more collaboration? Absolutely. And that's where new ideas and new ways of doing business must come to play. I'll give you an example, which is why I'm also excited about the Southeast Development Commission and what the president has done with it. It's an opportunity for collaboration, where our states in the Southeast can identify common empowerment opportunity programs, more so now that there is more money in the system to focus on economic empowerment of our people, particularly young men and women, and in fact, those that are outside the safety net. We need to bring more people along. The more they are busy and they have opportunities to earn a living and feed their families, they'll be too busy to focus on criminality.
All right, Mr.
So I'm making that connection because it's important.
Because of time, let's look at promises made and promises, and the disappointment that comes from not fulfilling those promises as far as this is concerned. I heard you talk about Southeast Development Commission. It's a brilliant idea, but it depends on who you're talking to about relevance or not relevant, but the idea has been in the works for a long time. But we have other models like the NDDC. How much has that done intervening in the Niger Delta? So your answer is as good as mine in terms of efficiency and effectiveness. Would this really change anything? So I want you to speak to the issue of the government led by the governors themselves being strong enough, having the political will to make promises and fulfill them, because failure to do that is a reason for some of these things we're trying to deal with, that is causing some of the insecurity that we're dealing with in the Southwest region.
Yes, so I also agree with that point. And that's why I make the point that we need more fresh ideas, new blood, and new focus.
What do you mean by new blood?
So here's what I mean. People who are not necessarily professional politicians. There's nothing wrong with being a politician. But I think it's more important to also have people who understand driving processes from a viewpoint of the private sector training. Because you focus on results. I mean, and you can look at the Southeast and across the country.
Soludo is from private sector.
Yes.
Mba is from the private sector.
Yes.
Alex Oti is from the private sector.
Yes.
Who else is the other governor?
My governor is from the private sector, particularly oil and gas. Yes.
Well, he's also been in the political space.
That's what I'm saying. So I'm saying, so that's the point. So what I'm saying is we need to deploy new ideas of how to deal with these issues. And they're not very complicated in my view. For example, it is important for our governors of the Southeast to become the architects of mobilizing our people, key stakeholders, business members of the community, religious leaders, professionals in our local governments to focus on our local government security challenges and what we can do together. It is not only the governors that can solve this problem. We need all of us working together. And so many new ideas have to come to play.
So give us one of these ideas you're talking about so that we're in practical terms.
Yes.
One idea, straight up.
So I'll give you just one out of many. I think it is important that we now begin to have in our states employment departments. If you have, for example, in my state or southeastern states, Ministry of Employment, what we'll be gunning for is to gather data. Who and who in our state are looking for work? What is their qualification? Where do they live? What skill sets do they need further training? Do they need incubation? Can we help them with job placement? That's a new idea. Right. It requires a structure. And I'm saying we do it in the private sector because we incubate our people to bring them into mainstream by internships. It's not that expensive to do. Well, that's important. For example,
it's very interesting, this conversation, because what you find a lot of times is technocrats come into governance, and a lot of times you see them flop because politics is actually rocket science, as someone has said. You need to balance a lot of interests. So if you are trying to go, corporates, they'll tell you, no, this is not corporate. You have to drop that toga. But quickly, extra states creation, more states creation. I'm sure you've heard that conversation time and again. Let me mention them, pardon me. So states like Olu, Aba, Urashi, Etiti. Do you think that will, Anyoma, do you think that will solve the problem?
Well, guess what? There's been a long-standing issue in the Southeast about being shortchanged in state creation. I think everybody understands that. But that's not my focus. What drives the issue of states creation, just as local government, is allocation from the center. it means you are getting more money allocated. Right. I come from the school of thought that what we need to do is create more wealth for our people.
So not more states?
I'm not saying that necessarily.
All right.
I'm saying that we, even as we speak, have sufficient opportunities to create real empowerment for our people and keep them busy.
All right.
The busier, the less insecurity.
There you go. A very interesting conversation, but we have to thank you so much, Mr. Jerry Chukwueke, Public Affairs Analyst and former Chief T.A. to Governor Uzodimma on new Imo project. Wish you the very best.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Good luck. Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
We'll take a moment now, and when we return, we'll talk bilateral relations. What is Nigeria doing with Taiwan? How well are we maximizing this global village concept? That's in a moment, so stay with us.